Okay, my name is Peggy Louise Spiegel, Chasen. Spiegel is my maiden name, and I was born March 1st, 1927, in Omaha, Nebraska.
Tell me about your parents.
Well, my mother's parents came from Russia. My grandfather came later, but my grandmother sold her tavern. She was a bar lady, and her pearls to sponsor some people to take her across a swamp. And while she was going across the swamp to the next country, she lost her youngest son, Sidney. He was 18 months old. And the men that were taking her through told her, good, because we don't like children because they cry, we got to go. She said, I'm not leaving my Sidney. And then she went back until she found him. And they got to London, and where they got jobs at a cigar factory. And somehow they earned enough money to get to the United States. And she had an uncle from Grand Island. He was mayor there, and his name was Uncle Krimachuk. And he sponsored them to come to Lincoln, Nebraska. And he gave them a cow. And then my grandfather found a job at as a security guard because he didn't speak English. Security guard.
What was their maiden? What was their name?
Soklin, Soklyn, and they were from Kiev. My mother told me a story one time where they were hiding from the soldiers, and so all the girls hid under the bed or whatever, and she climbed an apple tree and fell down. And my grandfather had to carry her to 20 miles to the nearest city to have the legs set.
Good afternoon. I'm Joseph Chasen. I was born in Omaha, Nebraska, 6/22/1928. My parents were Max and Fanny Chasen. My father was born in Russia, and he had two sisters and an older brother by about 10 years that all came to America, but my grandparents, father's parents, never did come over from Russia and died over there, so I never got to know them. My mother was born in Omaha, Nebraska. She was one of 7 children. Let's see, I think she was the second from the youngest. My father and mother primarily had grocery store, neighborhood mama and papa grocery store, and we had a house behind the store that we lived in. In those days, Depression years, as I was growing up, everybody was having a tough time trying to just find a job or do a little business to make enough money to feed their children. I had an older sister by 6 years who died many years ago, cancer, so I really was like a single child. What else
What was your mother's maiden name?
Olander. She had 4 brothers and 2 sisters.
Did they settle in the Omaha area?
Well, let's see. I had two uncles that moved to California, and one I never did see because we never went to California. And another uncle lived in California and owned some couple of neighborhood movie theaters. He had come with his wife to visit a couple of times in Omaha. My other 2 uncles lived in Omaha and died in Omaha. The aunts my Aunt Gertie was the one just older than my mother. They, most of their life with her husband, who came from England, they were in the shoe business. And both of them did come to Omaha when time for passing away. And then there was a younger sister that was a buyer at Brandeis department store, and she died very young at the age of 28. So I never knew her longer than when I was about 6 years old. She always, as a lady buyer, she had male men people who liked to date her, and they'd give her boxes of chocolate candy and so on. And whenever we'd go over to visit, I was always with grocery store candy, licorice, and BB bats and so on. And she thought that was pretty chintzy when here she has all this nice chocolate candy that she'll give us to eat from her dates. What else do you think you want to look for?
Peggy, tell me about your parents, your mother's maiden name.
My mother's maiden name was Sockland, and there were 7 children in the family. There was Libby and Goldie and Sarah and my mother, and there was two sons, Sydney, I forgot the other, Sam and Willie. And Willie was in the cavalry during World War I, and we had never heard from him after that. But we kept in touch with all the family. About my mother's family, let's see. My father chartered a train from Omaha to Lincoln for the wedding, and gave my grandmother $500 to pay for the wedding, and that was about 1914, something like that. And I know about my father's. He also came from Russia, and his mother and father were very religious people. In fact, his mother was the volunteer midwife and mortician for the families that lived on 24th Street, or just generally the Jewish population in that area. And when someone would pass away, they would take the body to her house, and she would stay all night with the body until the burial the next day. And my father had, there were 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls, and the oldest son, Harry Spiegel, had 7 children, and he was at the YMCA, and he slipped and fell on the ceramic tile and died. That was many years ago, and he had 6 children, and let's see, my father had a junkyard, and with his father on North 24th Street, and they had also built a few buildings next door for a shoe store and haberdashery, which the property they lost during the Depression. And things I remember, my dad and I were very close. My oldest brother was 14, and my sister was 12, and my brother was 10 when I was born, so I was pretty much the baby. So I was a constant companion to both my mother and my dad. I used to go to the show with my dad on Friday night, and my mother on Sunday. And my mother drove a car in the 1920s, and she enjoyed life. She worked hard, but she played hard too. She enjoyed cars, and she enjoyed family, and she was a marvelous cook. I wish I had some of her recipes.
Tell me about your cousins. Did you have a lot of cousins?
I did. I had a lot of cousins. Harry Spiegel had 7 children. Dick Spiegel, Lillian Yaffe, and Clara, and Lillian Yaffe, and I can't remember all the names now. There were some, and Lucille, and Dick Spiegel was the only son, but there were 6 sisters. and then he had a sister, Dora Korn Swengel, and she had 3 children, Shelley Korn, Henry Korn, and Sidney Korn. And there was Mariam's Spiegel Gentis, and she had one daughter, Rose Gentis Baum. And then there was Charlie Spiegel, and he had 3 daughters, and they lived in Anderson, Indiana. And then there was Esther in New York. No, it was Philadelphia, and she had 2 children. One daughter I still keep in touch with, Betty, and I think that's all the children. And there's that on my father's side.
Did you have a lot of cousins living in Omaha growing up?
They were older than myself. It's only Shelley Korn and myself that were about the same age. Otherwise, they were all grown up. But they were all close, and we had a lot of fun together.
And Jay, how about you? Did you have a lot of relatives in Omaha?
My uncle, that was like 10 years older than my father, lived in Omaha with his family, and also my Aunt Jenny, but they moved to St. Louis, and what cousins I had all were born and grew up in St. Louis, and I was kind of younger than most of them, and when we'd go there to visit by the Wabash train, they really got pretty close to me as the youngest male cousin. I wanted to go back and talk a little about my grandfather in Russia. As I say, never had a chance to come over here. But my father came when he was about 17 years old, I think. He was here about 2 years and got drafted in World War I, and he served 2 or 2.5 years in the Black Forest War with World War I. My mother got as far as the 8th grade, and she went to work for Brandeis, and I'm not sure what department, and she pretty well looked after my father. She was, they moved in with her folks for about 6 years, and my father and my mother's father were very close because they used to go to shul together in daven and have our Pesach and so on together, and they were very, very close, almost like a father and son. My dad and mother, when they worked in the grocery store, they worked 6 days a week. In those days, you never were open 7 days. You always had to be closed 1 day by law. So they were closed on Sunday. So on Sunday, my mother would use that in the morning to clean her house and cook a lunch or dinner. And my father would work in the store on the 7th day. It's closed, and he was always busy washing and cleaning the meat and produce. And when it came time for Christmas, I remember I used to help him put tags and price the Christmas trees for the Gentile people. Then we'd have lunch, and we'd hurry up by 2 o'clock. If you beat the 2 o'clock, that was when the prices went up for Sunday, but that was kind of our social time for family. Another thing my dad, it was a special thing, was when in the summertime when I was in the grocery store, and he'd close about 9 o'clock on Saturday night, get in the car, and we lived on 30th in Chicago. We'd take the car and drive way out to Florence and get root beer floats. And my dad was so tired almost all the time, he'd always have to stop about every 3-4 miles and just take a 10-minute nap or something. He just worked so hard. Life was tough, but there again, let's talk about the quality of food. You know, maybe we'd have lettuce or oranges or whatever that was in the store, and any of them were bruised. That was the kind of thing my mother would take in the house, and you cut out the bruised or bad part of any kind of vegetables or produce that you had or fruit, and the rest of it was good, but you couldn't sell it to anybody. So that's what we ate, was what was left after, you know, the good, what is quality enough to eat, and throw away the rotten part from what you couldn't sell to somebody in the grocery store. As far as my aunts and uncles, like I say, my uncle, and he was a chef, not a chef, but in the shams in the synagogue, and he taught Hebrew. And my aunt married a man, and he worked for many years in the dairy, and going back those days, you had horse and wagon was what you delivered, ice and milk and bakery, but he worked for a dairy for many, many years. And one time when I went there to visit, and they started getting trucks, they had a nice big truck, milk truck model with a couple of milk cans in it and a battery and a little light for headlight and so on. And he gave that to me. My girl cousins couldn't stand it that I got that. My uncle gave me that truck. They wanted it. It was really something. I cherished that for many, many years and played with it. In my lifetime, I had bicycle, red wagon, what else? Scooters, sleds, and I always kept my toys in great shape. When they were probably 5, 6, 8 years old, they looked as good as the time I got them. Our house the store faced 30th Street, and the house was connected behind, and its door faced Chicago Street. Then down back of that, going to the alley, was a lot that was an empty lot that my dad owned. And he had one of our customers who was a carpenter or fixer-up kind of guy. He had a swing and we call it
Teeter-totter.
teeter-totter built for me. You know, they didn't have them in those days like they do now. They're metal. You buy them in a department store. He had that built for me, and I never asked for it. He just, you know, it's the way my father was. He was a good guy. My mother was a nice person. She was very close to my father, and it took till after my father died, when he was about 81, that my mother really became much more attached to us. Then from then on, she finally told us what she was worth, and we did her shopping for her, and she then thought a lot more of my wife. Like I say, she was mostly, not so much just me. She was very involved with my father. But once he passed away, she became very involved with us and very close.
What brought your family to Omaha?
Being my father,
Yeah, the whole family. How did the family ever get here?
well, in those days, I think there was connections made that when people came through Ellis Island and came to New York, there was Jewish people that lived in small farm towns and even cities like Omaha and Lincoln and so on. And these people were told, go out to Omaha and there's people that have already been here and they'll help you get a job and make a living. And that way, like I say, my father, the one uncle and one aunt came to Omaha, then went to St. Louis, and another aunt went to New Orleans. And what else are we looking for?
Peggy, how about your family? You said that somebody, the mayor of Grand Island, was instrumental.
Right.
And
He
bring-
sponsored them from New York to come to Lincoln, where he helped them settle and he got them a cow. And much of my life was spent in Lincoln, Nebraska, because that's where my mother's family was from there. And I had cousins there. An aunt was Libby and Sal Zager, and they had a son, Julius Zager, and Rose Zager Block, who had a grocery store. They had several grocery stores in Lincoln. One time they received a postal card mailed to Rose and Benny in Lincoln, Nebraska, and no address, but they got it at their grocery store. And my grandfather was a security guard for the bank and for the Capitol building. When he first came here, he tried to sell pots and pans, but he didn't speak English. And people would say, "Not today," and he would say, "I don't have any not todays." Anyway, but I spent a lot of time in Lincoln because that's where my mother was from, Lincoln. And after my grandfather passed away, my grandmother was ill, and my father had such great respect for her that we lived on 38th and Dodge at that time. We had moved from 24th and Nicholas, and they had a large bedroom, and my grandmother shared a bedroom with my parents, which I thought was very commendable for my father to accept his mother-in-law in the same bedroom while she was ill. He had a lot of respect for his, I think he called her Schwer. I think that's mother-in-law. And you don't have to, did you turn it off? Oh, okay, just don't pay attention to that. So a lot of time was spent in Lincoln. I also had an aunt in Audubon, Iowa, and her name was Goldie Krasny, and they had a People's grocery store there. And a lot of my summers were spent in Audubon, Iowa, because my folks wanted me to get off 24th Street because there was no place to play in Audubon, Iowa. I had a big yard and a lot of friends. And I also went to the Jewish Community Center. They had a day camp there called Camp Akiba, and I would go there during the summer. And I had an aunt in California, Sarah Soslick, and she had 2 children. And I had Uncle Sidney. I was his favorite because he didn't have any young children. He didn't have any children at all. And he was married to Ray Borsky, and she was a big manager of the lower level of the Brandeis department store. And there was an Uncle Sam in California, Sam Sokolin, and he was a baker. And Willie, we didn't know. He was the one that was in the cavalry, which we had never met. What else? What else did I?
Was this mayor of Grand Island, was he Jewish?
Yes, yeah. But all I knew his name was Uncle Krimachuk.
And he was related some way.
It was an uncle, somehow. My grandmother's maiden name was Orloff. So there was a lot of cousins of hers that I never met, but that was her maiden name. And they were just lovely grandparents. I couldn't speak too much with my grandfather because he didn't speak English, but I knew a few Jewish words and we communicated. I remember he had large blue eyes. He was very penetrating blue eyes. A lot of us in the family have those blue eyes. And he was bald-headed, and my brothers were bald-headed, and my two sons are too, so it's from the maternal side of the family. And my brother, Arthur, he passed away about 5 years ago, right? And he went to school in Lincoln. He got a Regent scholarship to go to school in Lincoln. And my brother Harry was in the Army. Then he came back and he worked with my father in the junkyard on 1207 North 24th Street. And then he married Marion Bernstein Spiegel, and they had two children, Susie and Jeff. And Jeff passed away when he was 47 years old from a brain tumor. And my sister married Dr. Samuel Victor, a psychiatrist from Chicago. And my folks were so pleased about that they were encouraged to move to 112 North 38th Street away from 24th Street because my sister was marrying this very special doctor, and he was a very, very fine man. And they were always very close to me. I was like his little sister. They used to take me on trips. Wherever they went, they took me. And that's pretty much my family.
Tell me about elementary school. Where did you go to school?
Killam School. I went to Killam School until the 7th grade, and then we moved to North 38th Street, and I went to Henry VIII School, and I graduated from University of Omaha in 1945.
What high school did you go to?
Central High School. Class of
You
class of
graduated
40.
in 49.
Yeah, right. 40. I graduated in 45 from Central.
Were you part of the group that ran over to the Jewish Community Center at the end of the day?
Always. That's where we went after school. Went to the Jewish Community Center.
I went to grade school, Henry W. Yates, from my whole grade school days, and there was probably about 12 Jewish kids in my class of 30, 35. We had a good group. We had a lot of social things, and we had a good time during grade school. Then I went 2 years to Tech High, and I thought I wanted to be an electrician. And I got involved with Ohms and Watts and the different kind of workshops of carpentry and bricklaying and so on. And then to myself, I don't really want this. I changed my mind that I wanted to go to college and get a degree and then be business administration, which I did. I transferred to Central High for 2 years, and I was in ROTC band. I was a commander of the band as the first lieutenant in the ROTC, and Peggy Lou and I went to a lot of dances and different social functions that they had at school. We had a good time. After school, we'd go to the center and for a half hour or something, he's kidding with the kids or going downstairs and buying a snack of some kind or an ice cream cone. And then I went 1 year to Nebraska in Lincoln and came back and went to UNO and lived at home. And Peggy Lou went to UNO, and she's a year older than I am. And I went through college in 3 years. Not that I'm so smart, but I went to 3 summers. UNO was one of the very first colleges in the country that had air conditioning. And because of it, I did go my 3 years of summer school. And we both, I stayed very close to requirements. so get those out of the way first before I did much with electives. And we graduated about June 6th or something like that. And then we were married 5 days later, 6 days later, June 12th. And I don't know what else you got to say.
Where did you two meet?
Probably mostly the Jewish Community Center. We went to that skating party that was on 40th and Farnham. We were about 7th grade at that time too, 7th or 8th grade.
Is that when you started dating, about that time?
We
Or
did-
seeing each other?
We didn't really date,
No.
we knew each other.
Yeah, that's about it.
I think it was probably when we were about sophomores or something did we really start to date. Before we just were close friends, and then it became we just got closer and closer, and I guess we decided that's going to be our future. She dated many guys, and then when she dates somebody else, I wasn't one to sit there and wait by the phone or sit around and do nothing. I dated other girls. I had plenty of dates, and we were very social people, and we went to dances. And, we belonged to a dance club in later years where we went regularly, and we had basically we had a good social life. Nothing expensive or wild or anything, and we didn't drink, we didn't smoke, no pot, nothing like that. It was just plain, just good, healthy young people growing up.
And what was your degree in, Peggy?
I have a degree in social work, and I started work for the County Welfare Bureau for 2 years, which was quite an experience because we didn't have any practicums in those days. I just went out cold turkey. But my senior year, I won first prize for my thesis, and it was a check for $25, and no certificate or anything. So that was the year we got married in 1949, and we went to Chasen's grocery store, and I spent it on groceries, and I have no proof that I ever won first prize for the
I'm a
sociological.
witness she actually did win it, I know that.
And then after 2 years, I worked for the Salvation Army Booth Memorial Residence with pregnant unmarried girls, and along with Nebraska Children's Home Child Savings and Jewish Family Service. And I was there for 26 years, and then I retired.
And Jay, what did you do after you got out of college?
I had probably half a dozen entry-level jobs the first 5 or 6 years. And in 1954, I went to work for Rikers Container. It was mostly an office position, and after about 4 or 5 months, 6 months, Henry Rikers decided to start having me take one of the cars and go out and try and sell some products. And I say, to who and what? And he gave me the opportunity to learn salesmanship, but he wasn't really a great teacher personally, but he just told me spend a half a day doing paperwork inside and a half a day going out and selling glassware and containers, packaging. And it ended up that within about 5 years, Henry we had about 12 branches, 12, 14 branches, and Henry was branch manager of Omaha as well as the vice president of the company, and I guess his brother-in-law Mort must have told him, you got to come into just management, you got to have a manager for Omaha, and he put me in as manager, and I must have been manager for 10, 12 years, and I don't know what I can tell you from there.
Never bought out.
Were you
Yeah,
out
they were
selling?
bought out. Yeah, I was out selling, plus I had three other salesmen, and I had a warehouse. I must have had about 12 employees that was under my jurisdiction and my management. And then we got bought out by a company called
Standard.
Alco Standard from Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, and they they changed the name to Alco Packaging. And after about 3-4 years, they decided they were going to get rid of Henry and Max Rikus and Mort Richards, who were the prior owners. They figured they bought them out. Now they're going to put in their own people to manage the company. And the Rikuses then going to start their own business, start again, packaging business. And I and 4 other guys were going with them, and the last minute I decided not to. And I ended up with about 18 years with Alco Packaging, and I stayed on as manager, and later on became a vice president of an area as well as manager of the branch in Omaha.
During those years, were you doing much traveling?
I probably went out of town, I would guess, once every other week for a couple of days. But outside that, my time was spent in Omaha and calling on trade and doing paperwork and training. And I must have been a very good trainer and person who hired, because I would guess over a period of 35 years with both the Alco, the Rikus family and the Alco Standard people, I must have hired 20-25 people and trained, and as soon as they start to produce and do me some good, then these guys, they'd pull them, they'd send them to other branches where they needed help. So, like I say, you don't fight City Hall. I'd hire them and figure them for being in my group, and the company would find a reason they want to transfer them to another branch that could use some new trained help. So I contributed a lot to the company. At one time, they had a very big meeting with Alco Big Shots in Dallas, and it so happened that particular month was the best month I had ever had in sales and profits and so on. And when I went to that meeting, boy, I was treated like I was King Royal. I really had a big month.
For the National Guard.
Well, during younger years, about the time we got out of college, I got out of high school, they quit the draft on July 1st when we beat the Japanese, and I was 18 June 22nd, just 8 days before. So I never got drafted, and then we went on to school, and you got some deferment for my service. And in about 1951 or 2, I joined the National Guard and a couple other friends. I was in field artillery, and then after 3 years in that, I did 6 years in reserves, Army quartermaster, and 2 or 3 times we were supposed to. We were at war in Korea, and our unit was alerted a couple of times, but they didn't take us. I think at that time there must have been 3 or 4 divisions did go to war in Korea, and ours was one and was supposed to be coming up for going, and if they said go, I'd have been in Korea. I'd have been in the Army. I was a master sergeant in the reserves, and I was holding down the work of a commissioned officer. I took a Series 10 multiple choice, or it was Army training correspondence that most people take about a year and a half to do. I did in about 3 months and had an average of about 93 or 4%. I had everything lined up to get a commission, but I had to go before a board of regular active officers. There was a major and a couple captains or something, and because I had never had at least 6 months of actual active duty, they didn't give me a commission. But I'm sure if and when we did go to active duty, I'm sure I'd have gotten probably up to a first lieutenant immediately. And so I felt I've done my part, and I was available. You know, you had to be available if you're in a reserve unit, and if they take you on active duty, you got to go. But our unit didn't. We were ready to go, but they never took us. As reserves, we trained. It was about 3,000. If your unit had gone to active duty, we'd have probably built up. I think divisions are about 8,000 or 10,000. But I was ready to go. I had to go.
And Peggy, some of your work experience, what were some of your...
Well, I worked at Aquila. It was an upscale ladies department store for 2 years in high school and 4 years through college. And that really helped me pay for my tuition while I was going to UNO. But when I graduated high school, I got a government job for 3 months. And at that time, I earned $60 a week. That was a lot of money in 1940, what year was that, 1945. Then I went to college for 4 years, got a degree in social work. In my first position, I made $42.50 a week. What a contrast. But I enjoyed sales also, and I did very well at customers that would come to me all the time. And that's where I met my future sister-in-law. She came in with somebody else. I didn't know her. And when I was introduced to her, I said, you know, my brother just came home from the Army. Would you like to go out with him? She says, yes. So she gave me her telephone number, and I gave it to my brother. It was on a Saturday, and he called her, and they went out that night. And my brother woke me up, I don't know what time it was, and said, best one you ever fixed me up with. And so that was my work experiences. The government job, I wondered why I gave it up, but because I was monetarily, I was making much more money. But I enjoyed social work. I enjoyed working with the pregnant girls and with the adoptive couples and working with the different adoptive agencies here in Omaha. And I was the contact for the Jewish community for child placement. I was their contact through booth residence. And that's my work experience. When I was little, there was a peanut company. What do you call that peanut? You know, Herman's Peanuts. And they started in the basement of their home. And a friend of mine, Irene Sorf, and I went down there one day. She said, I'll give you a job. And so she had us packaging little peanuts in little packages, and we'd staple them. And then when we got through, she gave us each 50 cents. We never went back. But Herman Peanut Company became quite big here in Omaha.
Well, his nephew, Joe Fischel, eventually inherited it.
Yeah, right. So those were the jobs that I had.
Peggy, tell me about your wedding.
see, we were married at the Paxton Hotel, and it was a rainy day, I do remember that, and we had a reception. I didn't know it, but apparently my dad couldn't afford the wedding, but I didn't ask him. Later on, I found out that he took a loan out on a policy to pay for my wedding and also my sister's wedding. And we went to the first night we went to the Castle Hotel, but we really wanted to go to the Blackstone, but we couldn't afford it, so we went for breakfast to the Blackstone Hotel, and then we went to Colorado Springs for our honeymoon. We met close friends there, Dick and Joy Martin. They were already there for a week of their wedding, and we spent 2 weeks with them and had a very nice time. And we had Jay's father's car, and I think it was really a nice wedding. We had a lot of family that came in, especially from Lincoln.
With the wedding, time-wise, the new synagogue on 52nd Street was being built, and it was about 4 or 5 months till the new synagogue would have been built, and we almost thought about it. We were in a hurry. Now we're out of college to go get married, but if it wasn't for that, we were going to wait, and we wanted to be the first to get married in the new synagogue, but that didn't happen until about November. That was about 4 or 5 months later, so we missed that opportunity.
Our rabbi was Rabbi Moshowitz, and I also took a course in the Old Testament rabbi, and he would pick me up on 38th and Dodge and bring me home. There was an evening class.
Who were some of your attendants?
Let's see, Arlene Spiegel Bieber, Annie Belmont, Schrago Belmont, and Dory Schneider Gerber. And my flower girl was Connie Spiegel, and her last name is Horowitz, and she lives in Florida. And
Jay, who were your attendants?
About 3 that I can think of right now. My best man was her brother, Harry Spiegel, Dick Martin, Milt Lair.
Dick was on his honeymoon.
Oh, Dick.
Yeah, he was on
Well,
it.
who else was there?
Was it Art Epstein?
Might have been Art.
I
I don't
think-
remember.
I think it was Art Epstein.
I
No,
don't remember. Well, but I had about 3 or 4 attendants, I think.
but we had gone to Dick Martin's wedding a week before, and Jay was an attendant, and he just about passed out, remember?
I did.
He did, yeah, they had to catch him. He was, I think, nervous for our pending marriage. My grandfather, Samuel Spiegel, was one of the founders of the Jewish cemetery at Pleasant Hill. And he formed a group called the Shimskers. It was all the Jewish immigrants that were from Shimsk, and they all helped each other out financially and otherwise.
Well, I want to mention a couple of things having to do with our families. Her father was probably like 5 or 6 years older than my father, who died at the age of 81. But one thing that I'll never forget, and I still think about it from time to time, when my father passed away, her father came to the funeral and was in the one of the guest cars, and he wasn't really very strong to walk any place, and they were going to leave him sitting there while they took the casket of my father down, and he was buried. But my father-in-law was so close to my father that he made them take it down to where my father was actually being buried. And that was a touching thing, probably one of the most touching things that ever was in my mind.
My father had a lot of respect for Jay's father. Jay's father was very learned in the Talmud and so forth, and my dad respected him a great deal for that.
Let's go back to when we were announcing to getting married. It was like an April, I think, and Rabbi Moskowitz
Moshewitz.
Was teaching night school, and we still decided to have an announcement. My folks went over to your folks' house. We went there and for dinner, I think, and we had a cake and candles. And the rabbi came about 9 o'clock to join in with us with our announcement of our engagement. Remember that? Yeah.
Sort of. My mother was always cooking for somebody, so she probably had a nice dinner. Close this meeting and tell my children how much I love them. There is Steve, and he's married to Deborah Slutsky Chasen, and they have 2 children, twins, Matthew and Jeremy, and Danielle Tornquist, which I love those grandchildren so very much. And my daughter, Diane Chasen Stein, is married to Rick Stein, and they have 2 lovely children, which I adore. Rachel is 15 years old and loves horses, and Aaron was recently bar mitzvahed, and I love them both dearly. And my youngest son is very special to me, Gary, and he lives in California, and we hope that he'll be coming back to Omaha soon, and we're looking forward to it. And we love all our family.
Well, I don't know really much more to add to it. We're holding our breath a lot about our son in California because he's had some physical problems and had some operations and hasn't recovered yet, but we're looking for him. He's been out there about 25 years. He worked for Nabisco all that time, and he has his own townhouse. I think he's had enough sun and sand and get him healthy again. He's going to move back to Omaha, which we're going to be happy about. He used to call us about once a week on Sunday night, but now we talk to him almost every night or every other night because of his illness. He's had a few girlfriends, but nothing that he's gone ahead and got married or anything. And the main thing we're concerned about is health condition. We've made some trips with Gary, and we've been without going anyplace almost for a year, waiting for him to get healthy. The last thing he told us, he wanted to go a couple of weeks to Hawaii on a cruise or something, and that's kind of what we're waiting to do with him if and when we get him squared away with his health. We're just very concerned, and that's on our mind all the time. We love him very much.